Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being part of this madness. We're going to start in about 3 minutes. Feel free to make yourselves comfortable. Pour yourself a glass of water or milk or bourbon or scotch or wine, ice water, tepid water, room temperature water. I'm just going to keep mumbling. Oh, look at this. Look at that. You're welcome, Philip. I can't see you, but I know that you are there. I can feel you. Mumble, mumble, mumble. You're welcome. I'm excited to go all the way through June. And we were actually, once we start looking at short stories, I mean, there are so many hundreds that I really want to include. We'll probably end up extending it through December of 2028. And by 2028, I mean 2038. Just because I need this weekly because it's a good writing practice for myself. And I know a lot of folks do as well. So let's start just by kind of letting go of all the things we have to do. So, you know, all the bills there are to pay, all the people you have to get back to, all the weight of the unwritten novels in your backpack or in your desk drawer, all the ways we feel like we've not met our goals as writers, or we're not sure of our voices, everything that just kind of holds us back. Let's just let it all go for this hour, for as long as you're here. We're only going to focus on the written word. We're going to focus on mood. We're going to focus on character. We're going to focus on point of view. We're going to focus on words. Literally, we're going to focus on these words here and these words here. And then we're going to use these words to sort of inspire writing of our own. You're going to hear a lot of my voice at the beginning, and that's unfortunate for all of us involved. And then I'm going to talk less and less as we do a lot of writing ourselves. So every Tuesday, we're going to look at 2 stories. We're going to look at a very, very short story. This is an entire, complete short story in and of itself right here. And then we have a really, really long story by Alice Munro as well. So we look at this story in its entirety as a way of seeing how something looks from beginning to end. And then we look at the longer stories. We look at sections of them, and we go bit by bit by bit, seeing how the craft is working on a different level. So the the way we're going to start is there are five sort of kind of rules, and not rules, there are five sort of guidelines that cover writing the short short. The short story is any piece under 1,000 words. Generally, it's prose. The short story is any piece under 1,000 words, and generally it's prose. Um, it's sort of more akin to prose poetry, and the advantage of the short story is that you can publish a single short like this. You can stitch them together, so you have many different shorts, and they start to become chapters, and then they become book-length manuscripts. The short is one of the most malleable and useful pieces of writing that we do, and another advantage of it is that they can be published in small bits. So if you're working on a novel and the average length of time to write a novel is anywhere between 2 to 5 years, sometimes it's hard to feel that constant affirmation that comes from getting your work out into the world. The novel very often, when you're embarked on it, you're writing and you're writing and you're writing, but you're not feeling that other people are able to read what you're doing. And so there isn't that sort of positive reinforcement. What the short allows us to do is take a break from the novel or take a break from the longer story and publish and get our work out into the world. The other advantage of it as well is that if we're publishing them as we go, if we're publishing a lot of these as we go, by the time we have our book-length manuscript, many of the pieces within that book-length manuscript have already appeared in magazines or journals of some form. And so it's very easy to place a book if most of the pieces within that book have already been published in magazines and journals of various forms. The short story runs through the following principles. There are five. One is mood. For any short story, mood is paramount. And I'll talk about each one as we go, but I just so you can write them down and have it in your head. The first is mood. Number two is the awareness of something unsettled. In a good short, it is governed primarily by mood as opposed to plot. And number two, there's the awareness of something that is unsettled. The typical story has a conflict, it has a crisis, and it has a resolution. In most short stories, nothing is actually resolved by the end. There's the awareness of something unsettled, but it isn't necessarily settled by the end. In a short, number three, images carry proportionally more weight. Images carry proportionally more weight in a short story than in a longer story, than in a novel. The images are what the reader remembers after the story is over, and they carry a lot more weight because of the length of the short, because of its brevity. 4, the short story is marked by its title, by its first line or sentence, and by its last line or sentence. They carry proportionally more weight in a short story than in a longer story or a novel because it's so short. The title, the first line or sentence, and the final line or sentence contains proportionally much more weight in a short than in a longer story. And then finally, the short story feels completed yet open at the same time. It will feel as though we've read a novel, and it will feel, though we return to it over and over again, that we're discovering new things every time because of how much in a short is done through suggestion, it's done through innuendo, and it's wonderful training for writing the longer story or the novel, but it's also very valuable in its own right. So let me read An Unspoken Hunger by Terry Tempest Williams. I'm going to read it twice, and then I want to go through and talk about how it's working in terms of all these things. And then we'll do some writing of our own based off that. But first, what we're going to be looking for is 1, we're going to be looking for mood. 2, we're going to be looking for the awareness of something unsettled. 3, we're going to be looking for images. 4, we're going to be looking for at the title, the first line and the last line. And then 5, we're going to be looking for something that is complete yet open at the same time. Okay. In Unspoken Hunger, Terry Tempest Williams. It is an unspoken hunger we deflect with knives. One avocado between us, cut neatly in half, twisted, then separated from the large wooden pit. With the green fleshy boats in hand, we slice vertical strips from one end to the other, vegetable planks. We smother the avocado with salsa, hot chilies at noon in the desert. We look at one another and smile, eating avocados with sharp silver blades, risking the blood of our tongues repeatedly. It's 77 words. It's a complete short piece. I'll read it one more time. An Unspoken Hunger by Terry Tempest Williams. It is an unspoken hunger we deflect with knives. One avocado between us, cut neatly in half, twisted, then separated from the large wooden pit. With the green fleshy boats in hand, we slice vertical strips from one end to the other, vegetable planks. We smother the avocado with salsa, hot chilies at noon in the desert. We look at one another and smile, eating avocados with sharp silver blades, risking the blood of our tongues repeatedly. The title, An Unspoken Hunger, of any short cues us how to read it. It cues the reader how to read the piece. Then the first line, it is an unspoken hunger we deflect with knives, one avocado between us, cut neatly in half, twisted, then separated from the large wooden pit. And the final line, we look at one another and smile, eating avocados with sharp silver blades, risking the blood of our tongues repeatedly. You could pull out the middle section and just have the title, the first sentence, and the final sentence, and get a really good sense of what is happening in this short because of how much weight the first line and the last line take in any short story. The middle gives us more detail. It no pun intended, because we're talking about avocado flesh. It fleshes out the story. It gives us more information. The green fleshy boats, the vegetable planks, the smothering of the avocado with salsa, the hot chilies at noon in the desert. And then we get the final line. We have something unsettled here. We have two people. We have a relationship that is unspoken, an unspoken hunger. We're not given the details. We don't know why it's unspoken. All of these sensory details of desire and hunger, we have separated, we have flesh, we have smothering, we have salsa, we have hot, we have chilies, we have the desert. They're looking at one another, they're smiling, and there's a sense of risk. The sharp silver blades and the risk is referring not only to eating the avocado, but also the relationship between the two of them itself. And so the mood in the piece is one of excitement, it's one of charged energy, but it's also one of danger, it's one of risk, it's one of possible blood. It's one of possible pain. And we don't know why. We have no idea who these people are. We have no idea their gender, their gender history, their race, their background, their socioeconomic status, how tall they are. We know nothing about them except they're in the desert and they're having this supercharged moment together. But we don't need all this. If we were reading the novel, it would start out with some sort of David Copperfield stuff. I was born in 1952 in the Bronx, and I moved to New Jersey, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the stuff in a longer piece that sort of we as novelists or long short story writers maybe sometimes get bogged down in the details. Here, in 77 words, we get to the heart of a relationship. We get to the heart of something that is possibly working, possibly not working, but we don't know because it's all mood. It's mood driven, it's mood delivered. And the images, again, carry proportionally more weight in a short than in a longer piece. The images that we get here, every single one of them gears us toward that sense of passion, that sense of desire, but also that sense of the forbidden, that sense of, is this something that we can do? And again, all they're doing is eating avocados. That's the only thing that's happening in this piece, and yet so much is given to us. It feels completed, and yet it is also wide open at the same time. You can read it as two people just eating avocados. You can read it as something that's describing a relationship. And that's what a short does. A lot of it is left very open for the reader to decide. We're giving images. Sometimes we as writers don't even know what we're writing about. Not to get too artistically mystical here. But a detail will show up, and that will gear us toward a direction. Okay, we're going to do 8 minutes of writing, and I'm going to ask you to pick a food. I'm asking you to write down 3 foods, totally different foods. A fruit, say, a vegetable, maybe a dessert. 3 random foods. Could be grapes, could be ice cream, could be bread. 3 random foods. And then let's write down 3 abstract moods. And by mood, I'm meaning any level of abstraction. It could be fear, pain, jealousy, any abstract word, love, desire, frustration, anger, goal setting, sadness, joy. I'm just naming characters from Inside Out at this point. Loss. Pick any 3 moods, any 3 that you want, any 3 abstract terms. Hunger, um, you know, satisfaction, happiness, you know, any 3 abstract words, any 3 moods. And then finally, write down a setting. It's the desert, it's a store, it's a U-Haul rental place, it's a church, it's a synagogue of some sort. It's a boat on the ocean or a river, or it's a boat in a dock. 3 separate settings. It could be a fast food establishment, it could be a beach, it could be a tree, you're inside a tree. 3 different settings. It could be a road of some sort. Maybe you're sitting, it's got a back porch, a mezzanine, a vestibule, you're in a mall, you're in your house, you're in a room, you're in a kitchen, it's a bathroom. Anyway, write down 3 of those. Okay, actually, we're going to go for 10 minutes. For 10 minutes, pick 1 mood, pick 1 food item, and pick 1 place. And just start free writing from there. You're not going to share this. This is only for you. And don't feel like you want to move forward with the story. Just circle it. Circle it. What's in the room? What are the foods? And what is creating the mood? Okay. And we're going to write for 10 minutes, and then I'll bring us back together. We're going to go for 2 more minutes. Um, if you find yourself stuck, start pushing the mood through the details a little more. What mood are you trying to communicate? And what details can help you push that mood a little bit? Start to finish up, end the sentence you're on, end the line that you're on. Ending on an image is generally, and again, all rules are made to be shattered on the floor like a vase. But ending with an image, for example, here we have the blood of our tongues, is a very, very strong way to end. The reader is a lot smarter than we give them credit for. So much time in our writing, we're trying to tell the reader 4 instead of just telling the reader 2 plus 2 and letting the reader figure it out. I think a lot of times we try to hold the reader's hand. We try to, we push them so obviously to a conclusion. And readers are very, very smart. They will figure out our conclusion if we just give them the details. John Updike kind of famously said, it's the reader's job to judge. It's the author's job to put real people on the page. We don't need to tell our readers that this person's feeling jealous or this person's feeling happy or this person's feeling whatever it is. They will figure it out if we give them the details they need. If we give them the details that make up this character, they will figure it out. They will figure out what we're doing. And some sorry about that. Okay. So what I want to do now is look at, sorry. What I want to do now is look at a longer story by Alice Munro. But in order to transfer to the longer story, I want to look at the 9 different sort of principles or the 9 different foundational elements that make up creative writing. Some people say there's 18, some will say that there's 37, some people will say there's 2. This is just a way that is helpful for a lot of us to sort of break up what we're doing and to be able to think about it. And a lot of times when we're on the blank page and it's just us and the blank page, a lot of times we're not thinking about all of these. Oops. We're not thinking about all of these necessarily, but when we go back to revise and we look at our work, it's really helpful to break up what we're doing into small, manageable pieces in order to be able to hone in on things that we're trying to do. Especially sometimes if you're working on a piece and you know it's not quite working and you can't really quite put your finger on why. Sometimes it's helpful to break it up and look at what specific craft elements might be helpful to put it back together. Those 9 craft elements I divide in this way. 1 is sensory detail, 2 is setting, 3 is character and point of view, 4 is plot, structure, and pacing, 5 is voice, style, and tone. 6 is visual presentation. 7 is the title. 8 is the authorial identity. Who are you as a writer? And then finally is the theme. And theme is what's studied in college literature classes, et cetera, et cetera. The reader will decide on the theme. You as writer get to pick all of this. The reader will pick this. Sensory detail is just very quickly, very foundationally, the 5 senses. It's what you can see, it's what you can smell, it's what you can hear, it's what you can taste, and what you can touch. Without getting too matrixy or abstract, everything we know about the world comes through those 5 senses. The 5 senses are what enable us to turn black ink on white paper into the sound of rose petals falling into a pond, the taste of an orange, the feel of when you sit into a chair and it's a little too soft and you kind of feel the springs underneath you, and you know that it's going to be an effort to get out, but you know you want to go get the tea from the other room, but it's a big group of people, but you don't want to look like you're struggling to get out of the sensory detail is what gives us all of that. And without it, we don't have work. We don't have work on the page. And it goes in this order. We start our work with the sensory detail, with the specifics. When the reader opens our work and they put their eyes on our words, they're thinking about everything else going on in their life, the espresso machine or the Hallmark Channel or whatever it is. We're working with two-dimensional space. By using sensory detail, it takes them out of their world and it puts them into the world that we're creating. None of this exists here, except that it exists because she creates it. If she doesn't use these words, it doesn't exist. So sensory detail is where we always start. What are the specific details that pulls the reader from their world into our world? That leads us to whatever the setting will be, which leads us to the character and the point of view, which character and point of view will lead us to plot, structure, and pacing. A lot of writers that I know, and I've had the good fortune to work with thousands of writers over the last decade plus, a lot of writers I know, they start here. They start by worrying about the plot, what's going to happen, what's going to happen, what's going to happen, and they get stuck because they're stuck here or they're stuck on structure instead of starting here. And 9 times out of 10, if I see a piece of work that is stuck, it's because the writer started here instead of getting here in this order. Plot, structure, and pacing will lead to what we choose here, which will lead to the visual presentation, et cetera, et cetera. So let's look at Runaway by Alice Munro. And again, the goal of this time is to come away with several raw drafts every day. And hopefully with raw drafts that are an advanced space for you. And the way we do that sometimes is by looking at longer stories, because by looking at longer stories or selections from longer stories, we can also isolate the craft elements and hone in on what we're trying to do. So what I'm going to do up here at the top is, if I'm talking about a specific thing, I'm going to put it in bold. And that way, or I can even just highlight it. And that way you'll know what specific craft element we're talking about. We will return between now and the end of June. We will return to these 9 things over and over and over again. And each one of these 9 things breaks down into dozens of subgroups and dozens of different ways to approach things. And it's not as simple as first person point of view, second person point of view, third person point of view. The third person point of view breaks down into a couple thousand different ways of putting your psychic distance between yourself and your characters. So each one of these things is a lifetime of study. It's an incredible journey. I don't, and I know you as well, don't want to do anything else with your life. That's why we're here. Each one of these things, it's the beginning, not the end. What I want to talk about right now is character and point of view by using Runaway. The first paragraph of the story. Carla heard the car coming before it topped the little rise in the road that around here they called a hill. I'm just going to read the first paragraph. It's her, she thought, Mrs. Jamieson, Sylvia, home from her holiday in Greece. From the barn door, but far enough inside that she could not easily be seen, she watched the road where Mrs. Jamieson would have to drive by, her place being a half-mile farther along than Clark and Carla's. This is the first paragraph of this story. There's nothing else we know at this point. This is all we know at this point in the story. But here's what we know so far. We know that we're in a third-person point of view, and we know we're in the consciousness of a character named Carla. Because Carla heard the car coming, we're hearing what she hears. We're in the sensory detail of hearing. We hear what she hears. Carla heard the car coming before it topped the little rise in the road that around here they called a hill. Excuse me. So we're not sitting in the coffee house reading anymore. We're not in our house. All of a sudden we're here. What do we know so far? That around here they called a hill. We know that Carla's not from around here. We know that she's a little bit of an outsider. All this is stuff that we're reading and we're not really consciously aware, but subconsciously the writer is teaching us these things. Excuse me. Carla heard the car coming before it topped the little rise in the road that around here they called a hill. It's her, she thought, Mrs. Jamieson, Sylvia, home from her holiday in Greece. We're not in Mrs. Jamieson's point of view. Her first name is Sylvia. We're in Carla's point of view, and we're seeing Sylvia from the outside. Immediately, we know that she is rich. She's able to take a holiday to Greece. We don't know Carla's socioeconomic standing. We have no idea, but we can guess possibly that she's not, because from the barn door, but far enough inside that she cannot easily be seen, she watched the road where Mrs. Jamieson would have to drive by, her place being half a mile farther along than Clark and Carla's. Something unsettled is immediately introduced into the story. Some writers, the poet Kim Adnesio calls it tension. Some writers, the writer Kim Barnes calls it what's at stake. And a lot of writers will use a lot of different terms for this, but something needs to be unsettled. And it can be anything. It doesn't always have to be massive problems that the characters are dealing with. Scott Russell Sanders famously said he was tired of reading short stories about dysfunctional people sitting in rooms with a wine bottle on the table. It can be anything that's unsettled. And the reason for that is, unfortunately, because we're humans, only problems interest us. As humans, we're interested in trouble. That's what keeps us reading. We're very rarely interested in everything was great and everything was wonderful and it continued to be wonderful and it was just wonderful. We're also very rarely interested in everything was terrible and it was just terrible and it continued to be terrible and things didn't change because they were terrible. We're interested in trouble, but we're also interested in change. We're interested in gossip. We're interested in finding out what people think about other people. We're interested in the earth. We're interested in the natural rhythms. We're interested in and sometimes the tension comes from the language itself. Here, from the barn door, but far enough inside that she cannot easily be seen, we know that she's hiding from Sylvia and we don't know why, but she doesn't want to be seen by her. She watched the road. That's the first paragraph. We're immediately given the character, Carla, the character of consciousness, Carla, the fact that there's someone who is rich, who is returning from Greece, and the fact that Carla doesn't want to see this person, that she's nervous and she's afraid of this person and she's hiding. If it was somebody coming to see them, the car would be slowing down by now, but still Carla hoped, let it not be her. Now I'm going to read this paragraph. It was. Mrs. Jamieson turned her head once, quickly. She had all she could do to maneuver her car through the ruts and puddles the rain had made in the gravel. But she didn't lift a hand off the wheel to wave. She didn't spot Carla. Carla got a glimpse of a tanned arm bare to the shoulder, hair bleached a lighter color than it had been before, more white now than silver blonde, and an expression that was both exasperated and amused at her own exasperation, just the way Mrs. Jamieson would look negotiating this road. When she turned her head, there was something like a bright flash of inquiry, of hopefulness that made Carla shrink back. looking at the sensory detail being used here, and remember, we're still in Carla's consciousness. Carla is looking at Mrs. Jamieson, but here, the consciousness changes. Here, we're suddenly in Mrs. Jamieson's head. We're in her consciousness. Mrs. Jamieson turned her head once, quickly. She had all she could do to maneuver her car through the ruts and puddles the rain had made in the gravel, but she didn't lift a hand off the wheel to wave. She didn't spot Carla. Then we're back in Carla's consciousness. Carla got a glimpse of a tanned arm, bare to the shoulder, hair bleached a lighter color than it had been before, more white now than silver blonde. Here again, we get to see sort of the details of the difference in the economic status between the two women. We have a tanned arm bare to the shoulder, even though it has been raining where Carla's been living. So we know that she's been abroad. She's been in Greece. She's come back. She has a tanned arm. Her hair is now bleached a lighter color than it had been before, more white now than silver blonde. So we're getting all of these details, sort of showing the strength and power of the one character and the weakness currently of the other character. Here. That's 3 paragraphs in. Only 3 paragraphs in, and we already have 2 reasonably well-established characters. We have the setting, a rural area where it's been raining and there are puddles. The country road has ruts in it, it has divots, so we can kind of picture what that kind of a place is like as well. I'm going to read 2 more paragraphs before we do a little more writing of our own. So maybe Clark didn't know yet. If he was sitting at the computer, he would have his back to the window in the road. But he would have to know before long. Mrs. Jamieson might have to make another trip, for groceries perhaps. He might see her then. And after dark, the lights of her house would show. But this was July and it didn't get dark till late. She might be so tired that she wouldn't bother with the lights. She might go to bed early. All of this is indirect discourse that Carla is having in her mind. We're thinking, or the thoughts that Carla is having are being relayed to us as she's thinking them and in the way that she's thinking them. Here, we are thinking Carla's thoughts. The justification she's making to herself, the excuses she's making to herself, the rationalizations, in the thought process of here's what is obviously likely going to happen. Okay, let's take another 10 minutes and write. And here is the prompt. We're going to play with point of view and character. Think of 2 characters, and this is for you. This is, you're not going to share this. Think of 2 characters. They could be fictional, they could be real, whatever it is you're working with. If you're writing fiction, if you're writing nonfiction, if you're writing poetry. Think of 2 characters. Have one of them be significantly more well off than the other one. That doesn't necessarily mean money. Sometimes it means security in other ways. Some people find security in money. Some people find security in a relationship. Some people find security in not being in a relationship. Some people find security in their car or in their house. They find security because they have a skill that they're good at. They find security in the prestige they have in the workplace, perhaps. They find security in the fact that they're a wanderer and they're not tied down. Think of 2 characters. One of them needs to be insecure and one of them needs to be secure. Write it from the point of view of the insecure character looking at the secure character. And it's whatever that person is thinking about the other person. So you're going to step fully into the consciousness of one character as they look at another character. Okay, and follow their thoughts, whatever it is they're thinking, whatever it is they're doing. Let us know the setting. Where are they? And we'll go for about let's go for about 8 minutes. Okay, let's take one more minute. What is each character wearing? It's amazing how well we can describe character through one or two items of clothing. Clothing is often how we present ourselves to the world. It's a huge part of our identity. Um, and very often, finding one or two unique things about how someone dresses can give a lot of insight into their character. Um, okay, let's stop there for now. We're going to do 2 more paragraphs and then 1 more writing exercise designed to lead to a complete 77-word short story. Here are the 2 paragraphs. This was the summer of rain and more rain. They heard it first thing in the morning, loud on the roof of the mobile home. The trails were deep in mud, the long grass soaking, leaves overhead sending down random showers, even in those moments when there was no actual downpour from the sky. Carla wore a wide-brimmed old Australian felt hat every time she went outside and tucked her long, thick braid down her shirt. Nobody showed up for trail rides, even though Clark and Carla had gone around posting signs at all the campsites, in the cafes, and on the tourist office bulletin board, and anywhere else they could think of. Only a few pupils were coming for lessons, and those were regulars, not the batches of school children on vacation or the bus loads from summer camps that had kept them going the summer before. And even the regulars took time off for holiday trips or simply canceled their lessons because of the weather. If they called too late, Clark charged them anyway. A couple of them had argued and quit for good. We're starting to see Clark's personality, his violent, his temper. We're starting to see his personality developed. Okay, the weather here is affecting the characters here. The Tony Robbins and a lot of other sort of motivational gurus or psychologists will often say that people are not necessarily who they are all the time. It's the state that a person is in that controls a lot of their decisions. We know that when someone is panicked, they make different decisions than they do when they're not. When someone is drinking, they make different decisions. When someone is feeling financially pressed, they make different decisions. When someone is feeling flush, when someone is feeling disconnected from a spouse or a partner, when someone is feeling disconnected from they make different decisions. Here, the state, the rain, is leading to financial stress on Clark and Carla, which is one of the reasons that it's pushing the action and why she's hiding from Mrs. Jamieson. Okay, here is our next writing exercise. We are going to go back to An Unspoken Hunger by Terry Tempest Williams. Note that it's 77 words. Now, this is just an artificial number. She could easily have cut, vegetable planks and it becomes 75 words, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For the purposes of this exercise, let's limit ourselves to no more than 77 words, or 77 and a half words. We'll count a hyphen as half a word. So we're going to limit to 77 and a half words, 77 words. Take weather. It could be rain, it could be sun, it could be a tornado, it could be a snowstorm, it could be a hurricane, it could be a cyclone, it could be a typhoon, it could be an earthquake, it could be 100 straight days of 122 or 50 degrees if you're thinking in Celsius weather, and it's just driving everybody crazy. It could be a overcast. It could be an overcast day. Just think of some weather. It could be inside a mall where there is no weather. It's just fluorescent weather. It's 68-degree weather all the time. Think of some sort of weather pattern. It could be the desert here. It could be the desert. Think of some sort of weather. And then think of 2 characters. And have the weather be affecting the characters in some way. So here we see that the weather, the desert, the heat, the salsa, the chilies is making these characters feel both passion, but also risk and fear. In Runaway, we see that the rain, the weather, is affecting Clark and Carla, and it's making them feel financial pressure because people aren't renting horses to go riding as much. So think of a weather event and 2 characters. And the weather is going to be a push. It could be the power outage, right? The weather is going to put a little bit of pressure on the 2 characters, okay? And we're going to limit it to 77 words. So let's spend 3 minutes just writing. Just get words out on the page. Don't worry about how they're organized yet or anything like that. You'll move all this stuff around. For now, just get some weather on the page and 2 characters who are being affected by the weather in some way. Okay, we'll go for 3 minutes. Two more minutes. What is unsettled between the 2 characters because of the weather? It doesn't have to be conflict. Maybe they're arguing about who loves each other more, right? It can be anything. But something should be unsettled, not necessarily in a bad way, but it's unsettled. Okay, stop there. Now write a single sentence that uses abstractions. Describe what has just happened, but use an abstraction. What are you observing? Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it joy? Is it happiness? Is it delight? Is it wonder? Is it goodness? Is it boldness? Is it desire? Is it loneliness? Is it loss? Is it the fear of loss? Is it the fear of pain? Whenever we're stuck in our writing, a really great question to ask ourselves is just, what is this character afraid of? Or what is this character happy about in this moment? The closer we get into their consciousness, the more their world comes alive to us. Okay, now write, or finish that up. Just write one sentence of what you as the writer observe. What's it about? And then write one sentence in which you notice a detail that feels particularly important to the story. Write down a detail that you notice that feels like it relates to these characters somehow. Is the porch rotting? Is the kitchen faucet leaking? Does she pour her water and then pour her friend's water? Is the mother not speaking? And usually, just think of some image that seems to relate to these characters somehow. Have that be your last sentence, just for now. This is a draft. It's a rough, raw draft. And that whole messy thing that you have, it should just be this mess of details and characters and thoughts. That whole mess you have, give it a title. And it should just be like a cake that's batter. And the egg beaters are still sticking out of it, and the eggs aren't even beaten, and the flour's all clumped up. Like, that's what it should be. It should be this raw, kind of gross, yet kind of delicious mess. Like, you just want to put your finger in it and just lick the batter. That's what it should be like. And give that whole messy thing a title. Okay. Now, what I would do from here is spend this upcoming week keeping this at 77 words, not going above it, not going below, just as an exercise for fun. If it turns into a novella, great, let it do that. But just as an exercise, keep it to 77 words, the way An Unspoken Hunger is. And I'm going to email everyone this and also a link to again, I've been doing this for so long now that I've written sort of this, we call it the foundational elements of artistic writing because we're pretentious like that. I'm gonna email that to you as well, just so that you'll have it. But I would spend a week turning this into a 77-word short, remembering the following things. I'm only going to take a couple more minutes of your time because I know we're limiting ourselves to an hour. So give me one more minute. Remember mood. Think of what mood this story is evoking and focus in on that without ever really maybe even directly saying it. That abstract sentence you wrote, use one of those abstractions somewhere in the story. And abstractions they weigh our stories down, so we're only going to let ourselves use one. Give it a title as you have. The first sentence or the first line is going to carry a lot of weight. So have that be images of some sort. And then the last line will be that image that you feel really kind of summed up the whole thing. And this is just for a draft. You're going to write many, many drafts, and it will teach you what it wants to be. But keep it to about 77 words if you would. Okay, that is our hour. Thank you so much for being here. I have a mess here that I can't wait to start revising on. Look for an email from me within a couple of hours, and we'll see you back here next Tuesday. This is also recorded, so I'll be sending that out once I've had a chance to collate it, and that will be available to you as well.